So Philip Hammond has said public sector workers are 10% better off than their private sector counterparts once pensions are taken into account. The Chancellor refused to deny he told Cabinet colleagues that public sector staff were overpaid, as he was challenged by his Labour shadow to live on the wages of a hospital cleaner. In a moment, we'll hear from some of those hospital workers. But first, our health and social care correspondent, Victoria MacDonald, reports.
A picnic and a protest, teachers and parents against school funding cuts.
Raise money for all schools.
The tensions between government and public sector workers and the unions are growing. More strikes in London are planned next week by porters and cleaners in some hospitals. Then there are the whispers out of Whitehall with claims in a paper today that the Chancellor Philip Hammond told a cabinet meeting that public sector workers are overpaid.
Mr. Hammond, are public sector workers overpaid? Are public sector workers overpaid?
No answer, but earlier he did say he'd made a different point in that cabinet meeting.
Public and private sector pay on average are around about the same level, but when you take into account the very generous contributions that public sector employers have to pay in for their workers' pensions, their very generous pensions, they are still about 10% ahead.
A nuanced argument that hospital workers at this rally yesterday may not have appreciated. But from that rally to the TV studio today, the Shadow Chancellor pulled this from his pocket.
This is a payslip copied to me. This woman, full-time worker, earns £297 a week. At the moment, median rent in London is nearly £1,500. To buy a house in London is £500,000. Ask Philip Hammond if he can live on that.
Do you think that's overpaid?
No, of course it's not overpaid. And look,
that's very hard to live on that.
John McDonnell needs to remember that it was a Conservative government that introduced the national living wage.
Although this was a protest against changes to the school funding formula, it has become inextricably linked with the public sector row.
Whatever Philip Hammond did or didn't say in Cabinet last week, he has admitted today that there are growing concerns in the public sector about recruitment and retention. And that is precisely what this march is about today, that cuts to the school budgets means they can't attract the teachers that they want to.
At the same time, the Independent Pay Review Board has already recommended the 1% cap for teachers.
The young people finishing university, they're looking at the workload that teachers face, they're looking at the fact that pay is being held down and they're deciding not to come into the job. It's a real problem for our children's education.
Protesting for some clearly can be an exhausting business, but there are no signs that the public sector workers are tiring in their fight over pay and funding.